to the Rainmakers Power Hour with Wendy Butler, myself, Daphyne Christine, and today we have a special guest, Raj. And she's going to tell me her name better in just in a minute. But I tell you what, McGrath also is a business advisor and she works with Scott McGrath. And Scott is our guest speaker today. Scott McGrath is the founder of Nexxess Business Advisors. We're happy to have you here. And because of the connection between the two of you, and of course, McGenna and Wendy and I know McGenna for years. So McGenna.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Amazing. Well, it's so great to be here with you all, friends, and more friends and new friends. I have the pleasure to introduce Scott McGrath, who is a friend first and foremost, and a business partner at this point because I work alongside him to help businesses and individuals make better financial decisions. And Scott is a family man. He believes in God. He's got phenomenal children. I know some of them. He's got a fantastic team based out of Dallas, but their business is national and I believe international at this point. And I've met Scott many years ago at a networking event. And literally a few months later, I joined the team as a business advisor with Nexxess. And I have been of help to so many friends. Some of you are in the room. At a minimum, to spread the word, to educate that this option is out there for you to choose and not stay in the dark and make better, as I said, financial decisions. I'm super excited that you guys invited Scott today. He's amazing, and he's also a supporter of many beautiful things that Wendy and I have done in the book side of things and been part of many different networking events. And I truly am honored to have the opportunity to introduce Scott, but also for all of you to meet him and collectively learn from him because he is a gem and a wealth of knowledge. So that's Scott McGrath for you guys.
Absolutely. So with that, welcome, Scott. Scott, I want to say, Wendy, how long have you and Scott known each other? You have an interesting relationship as well, right?
Well, actually, I just met Scott recently at the Jetson Capital event there in Vegas, and where Scott was a sponsor and spoke about trust. And I have had so many questions about trust. And as you know, I that's one of the reasons why I typically ask somebody to be on the podcast because I have a lot of questions about the topic and as well as a lot of others. So that was one of the main things that one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on today, Scott. It was selfish reasons, obviously. And I
Sure.
want to get into your background a little bit for everyone that doesn't know Scott. But so Scott, you're from Texas, still live in Texas in Dallas. You have a business degree from Southern Nazarene University. You played college baseball there, is that right? And then became a pilot. Pivoted, got into financial advising through American Express, and went on to open this company. But I'd love to hear some more details on your background first and foremost.
All right. Well, if you have the PowerPoint open, I turned my camera around so you could see me, so I can't really see with the PowerPoint. So if you could put the slide on where it has my picture. So I have 3 certifications. When I went to American Express after college, I was a financial planner. I had all these licenses, all the financial planners have, Series 66, 7, and all that stuff. But, I ended up deciding, hey, I didn't want to make all their dreams come true. I want to make my own dreams come true. So I started my own company, just like any good entrepreneur would, right? And so I have 3 certifications, Master Financial Planner, Chartered Trust and Estate Planner, and then also Chartered Wealth Manager. So, but my goal, it's not about, thinking about me. My goal is to help my clients. So what I want to do is I want to put my client in the best position possible to do the best for themselves financially. And so it's interesting when if I would have gone to myself as a financial planner at American Express, I would have led the client down the same rabbit holes and the same roads that all the financial planners do. That was the wrong way to do it. Okay. I hate to say that on video here, but well, and here's why. Because when you go down the traditional financial planning routes, you create a lot of income. And when you create income, you create massive taxation. But also, more than that, worse than that, is you put yourself in a position to be sued where the courts control everything that you do. So think about it, if I got in a car wreck and they sued me, right? Well, I could lose everything I own because I'm the owner of it. And so what I learned when I started my own tax planning firm, I had some super smart people from Utah. Okay, I hate to say that, but they, they weren't from Texas. This is God's country here. So in Utah, some smart financial planners said, Scott, hey, you need to do this. I know that's what you were taught. Okay. But that's not where it's at. You need to look at this. And they showed me these structures, these trust structures. And like the most boring conversation I can have with you is talking about trust, right? Well, not this trust. Okay. So this trust is not boring. Why? Because I can show any business owner, I can show any investor. By the way, that's 99% of the people on the call today. If you're not a business owner, at least you're an investor, right? And you're going to invest your money. I can show any business owner or any investor how to literally scale everything they're doing like 2 or 3 or 5 times better than what they're doing. And the reason why is because I can show you how to keep a whole lot more than money you're earning simply by tweaking your structure. So the structure is everything when you have a business or you go to invest, because I like to say the roots create the fruits. And so if your structure is wrong, everything is wrong. And so is the PowerPoint up? Can y'all, okay. So if you go to the next slide, the first thing I have to tell you is disclosures. Okay. It says this presentation it's not financial advice. It's only for, so the next slide is where we're at. We're in Dallas, Texas. We want you to fly in, meet with us, spend the whole day doing a planning session. And let me show you, let all the other financial planners show you what they have. When you're done and you lost all your money to taxes and lawsuits, come see me, okay? Because I want to show you how to completely rid yourself of the tax man beating your door down, or the lawsuits, or the courts controlling everything. But trust me, the courts control all your assets if you don't have this specific type of trust. So but come to our office. We're 5 minutes from DFW Airport. And going to the next slide, it says, what we like to talk about is freedom. Okay. The number one thing I want to teach you is financial freedom, but you get that through, all the constitutional freedoms you have. You have the power freedom is what I call a birthright. You have the right to be free. You have the right to control your own income. You have the right to control if your money that you earn is actually treated as income tax. And so what kind of freedom am I talking about? I'm talking about freedom of privacy control, asset control, liability, tax, and peace of mind. Did you know that you actually have the ability to control whether or not someone can sue and take your assets? You can control that. So if you can control whether or not they even have the right to sue you, that's something you need to know about. Tax control. Did you know you have the right to choose if they're going to tax you or not? See, most people don't know that. I just met a doctor yesterday. He lost $1 million in tax because they said, well, you have to be an S corp and you have to pay yourself W-2. No, you don't. You don't have to be an S corp. You can choose a different structure, and you have the power to choose your structure. And that's what you have to understand. You just have to be told by the right person and explain how the power works. Now, go on to the next slide real quick. So what does the IRS not tax? They do not tax people, and they do not tax money. CPAs, they're like, I was actually doing continuing education for 250 CPAs one time. And I said this, I showed them the slide, and they're like, wait a minute, the IRS does tax people. And I'm like, no, they don't. And how do I prove that? Well, if you go to usdebtclock.org, you will see, okay, I'm going to go down a few slides if you can, okay? There's a slide there that's it's the US debt clock, okay? Just go down about 10 slides and you'll see it. If you look on the US debt clock, it'll tell you right there that, this is the amount of people that are taxed and this is the amount of citizens we have, okay? So you can do simple math real quick and realize that the IRS doesn't tax people. They only tax income, and they don't tax money either. So I'm going to prove it to you. Okay. So if you can see this white screen right here. Okay. And now go back up to the other slide, if you don't mind. While we're waiting, let's go back up to the slide that said, what does the IRS not tax? Now watch this. Here's your JOB. You work for a job, right? And watch this. When you work for a job, they pay you money, right? And then what happens when they pay you money? You go to tax hell and back. Okay, that's what happens. Okay, you work this job, you get taxed, right? But before they tax you, what do? They put some money over here in a 401k. Okay, they defer taxation. Okay, I'm going to explain that. Is this money taxed the year that you earn it? No, it's not taxed. Why is it not taxed? Because it hasn't become income yet. Now, when I take the money out of this trust, people don't know this, but the 401k is a trust, by the way. Okay. Okay, you think it's a 401k, it's really a trust. You're the beneficiary of the trust. So watch this. When they take a distribution and they pay you, guess what? This money, remember, the money that comes in here, it's not taxed. Why? Because it's not income yet. But when they distribute this money over to you, it becomes income and therefore you get taxed. Okay. But what I'm going to show you a trick. I'm going to show you to don't do what the wealthy do. I'm going to teach you how to do what the super wealthy do. Okay. This is what this, I'm not talking about the wealthy. The wealthy get distracted by CPAs. The wealthy get distracted by the guy next to down the street or their friend on the golf club. They get led into these, into the tax firms that they all say the same thing. They live inside of this little box and they don't ever want to come out of this little box. They never want to learn the alternative strategies out there of the super wealthy. But this is what I'm going to teach you about the super wealthy. When you earn your money from your job, I'm going to show you how to move the money into a specialized type of trust. Now, it hasn't become income yet, so the government doesn't tax it. Okay. Only if I distribute it out of the trust and bring it to myself would it become income. Okay. And that's how it works. And so it's no different than the 401k. The 401k is a trust, and what we set up for you is also a trust. And so that's what you have to understand is that we're going to teach you things that are legal. Everything we do is backed by hundreds and hundreds of court cases and hundreds of actual case law, actual cases you can look up and read. Okay. Let's go to the next slide real quick. It says 7 controls of taxation: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Guess what? I don't need to control. If taxation was a chess game, I only need one of the 7 to win the game. Okay. I only need number 7. You see, the IRS control who, what, when, where, why, and how. I control if. Because if they want to control who gets taxed, what they get taxed, when they get taxed, why they get taxed, if I control if I get taxed, I've won. I checkmate the IRS by explaining to them, hey, you can't tax, and here's why, because I haven't created income yet. And so I teach that to all my consultants. We have consultants, McGinna, you introduced her earlier, and she's one of our consultants, and that's what I teach them every once a week. We have training, but I teach my consultants, and they teach all of our clients. We have thousands of clients, but they teach our clients how this stuff works and how the super wealthy operate. And so I like to think of it as a chess game. But going to the next slide, learned hand. This is an appeals judge. I love to learn about judges. I like to listen to what they say, how they think. I like to read their court cases. Everything we do at Nexxess is based on 3 things. It's based on trust code, case law, and tax law. It's all based on tax code. It's all based on the 3 things. Learned Hand is one of the judges I like to read about. Going to the next screen, it says, Justice Learned Hand, U.S. Court of Appeals. He says there are 2 tax systems, 2 systems of taxation in our country. One is for the informed, the other one, and one for the uninformed, but both are legal. Both systems are legal. You can be an S Corp if you want to be an S Corp. Okay, they're legal. You can do that, and you're going to get taxed like crazy. Or you can do this other structure. It's completely legal, and it's And so going to the next slide. I love what he said, but I'm gonna read the next slide because you got to read this. It says, this is Learned Hand, by the way. He said, anyone may arrange their affairs so taxes as low as possible, and they're not bound to choose the pattern which best pays the Treasury. There's not even a patriotic duty to increase one's taxes. Over and over, the courts have said there's nothing sinister in arranging your affairs to keep your taxes as low as possible. Everyone does it, rich and poor alike, and all do right, for no one owes the public duty to pay more than the law demands. If I go to the next slide, this is what I teach my people. I teach my clients this. There's 2 rules in the tax code. Number 1, you only owe taxes on taxable income. Number 2, you only owe taxes when they become due. Now, look at the screen here. Remember the JLB? You work for the job? The money comes to 401k. See, it's not due yet. The taxes have not become due because you haven't received them yet. The same way works with a trust. If I take income from my JOB and it goes to the trust, I'm deferring it. I like to call the trust the deferred capital trust, by the way. We're taking money or capital, we defer it into a trust. It's not income yet, therefore it's not taxed. And basically, instead of living here, I want to teach you to live here. Okay. This is where not the wealthy, this is where the super wealthy live. Okay. They buy cars and boats and yachts and hundreds of acres of land. They buy all these wealthy things. But number one, the trust owns everything. They don't own it. You can't go up to the super wealthy and try to sue them, by the way. It doesn't work. Why? Because they don't own anything. So Rockefeller, which by the way, that should be the next slide here coming up. In a minute, I'm going to show you Rockefeller. Explain the quotes from him. You know, there's a saying that says success leaves clues. And I read the clues from all the super successful people. Justice Skelly, Wright, U.S. Court of Appeals, he said, it is unconstitutional to collect taxes that are not due. So if the money's sitting in the trust, it's not due. They can't tax this trust because we've deferred the income successfully in the trust. So the next judge I like to talk about is Louis Brandeis, former Supreme Court Justice. They have a university about him. Now, this is the coolest quote ever. He says, I'm going to read it to you. He says, I live in Alexandria, Virginia. Near the Supreme Court chambers, there's a toll bridge. And he says, when I'm in a rush, I pay the $1 toll. I get home early. But I usually drive outside the downtown section of C, and I cross the Potomac on a free bridge. Now, this bridge was there to provide a useful social service, getting drivers to drive the extra mile to alleviate congestion during rush hour. But if I went over the toll bridge and I went through the barrier without paying the toll, I'd be committing tax evasion. However, if I drive the extra mile and drive outside the city of Washington on a free bridge, I'm using a legitimate, logical, suitable method for tax avoidance. I'm performing a useful social service, again, social service. By doing so, for my tax evasion, I should be punished, but for my tax avoidance, I should be commended. The tragedy of life today is so few people know that the free bridge even exists. Did you guys know that so many people, even on this call today, a lot of you don't even know that this trust exists. It's even out there. And when you do hear about it and you go and talk to your CPA, the first thing they do is shoot it down, say that doesn't work, and here's why. These people, trust me when I tell you, I talk to CPAs all day long. They know nothing about this trust. They think they do, but they haven't read the court cases. They haven't read this book, by the way. This book is the document, which is the governing document, okay? Even on the IRS website, it says the Internal Revenue Code does not determine trust accounting income. Guess who does? This does. This trust determines trust accounting income. And that's on the IRS website. So going to the next screen, it's the John D. Rockefeller slide. So look at that one real quick. He was famous for saying one thing, and all the super wealthy agree. Okay. The next slide says, own nothing, control everything. How did John Rockefeller become so rich? He said, own nothing. You can't be the owner of it. If you're the owner, did you know that you can lose it? If the minute you're the owner, the courts can control it. You don't control it. If you own it, you don't control it. You don't control it, and they tax you to hell and back. Okay. That's just what happens. So what does John Rockefeller say? He says, hey, don't be the owner of it. Now, why do I need to be the owner of an asset if I can control it until I die? See, that's the secret. And I was telling this elderly man, he's 70 years old. I said, Mr. Johnson is his name. Mr. Johnson, I said, in 20 years, statistics say you're going to die. So if you're going to die in 20 years, are you going to own these assets when you die? No. He said, no. So why not sell the asset to a trust right now and have total control of the asset now, instead of waiting until you die and possibly losing it to a lawsuit, and you maybe get in a car wreck or something, you lose it, or being taxed for the next 20 years on it. And so, if you're going to die anyway, if that's the inevitable outcome, why not do it now? Why not take John Rockefeller's advice? He said, own nothing. What did John Rockefeller do? He sold everything into these types of trusts. He didn't own anything. So on to the next slide real quick. Supreme Court, holds that the trust relationship falls in the realm of equity. It's based on the common law, and it's not subject to legislative. So this trust is not controlled by courts. You have to understand that. It's not controlled by courts. The next screen shows the contract clause, one of the probably the most powerful clause in the Constitution, Article 10. It says, no state can pass a law impairing the obligation of contract. So guess what? This trust is a contract. This trust sets the rules for my trust, for my assets and everything. And by the way, Supreme Court ruling, Fletcher versus Peck. In fact, I take attorneys through an attorney call where I go through all the court cases and explain, hey, here's the 250 court cases. And they ask the question, well, what gives you the power to hold money pre-tax right here in a trust? I show them all the court cases. So how do you argue with Supreme Court rulings? You can't argue with them, okay? And that's what you have to understand. Going to the next slide, what is the spendthrift trust? Spendthrift trust, number one, it's illegal. It's used to taxation. It's used to offer financial protection to the beneficiary. It also limits the ability to freely control and spend the assets in the trust. This trust we set up has really cool, unique properties. I don't have time to go into it today. I want to keep this short because guess what? We got to do Q&A. We got to get to Q&A real quick. Question and answer. Let's go to the history slide real quick. This thing's been around for 500 years, everyone, 500 years or more. Before King Henry VIII set up the first spendthrift trust in Europe, the idea of a trust came from what are called the Anglo-Saxons. The Saxons brought the trust idea to England, and in 1533, King Henry VIII set up the first trust, spendthrift trust, by the way. So this thing's been around forever. So when they wrote the Constitution, they had to write it so that they protected your ability to create this book right here. That's how it works, okay? I'm not going to go through the other slides now. I will tell you this, on our YouTube page, if you just type in Nexxess, now everyone spells it wrong. It's N-E-X-X and then E-S-S. If you go to our YouTube page, I have 3 long 2-hour presentations. You want to understand everything about the trust, go to our YouTube page, watch the presentation, and you will understand it all. But just a couple more slides I want to hit. Let's go down and go to the slide that says when taxes are due. When taxes are due. These are court rulings. Now, I have literally hundreds of court cases. I'm armed with court cases. If a CPA comes to me, by the way, I get in front of like hundreds of them at a time. I do the continuing education. Sometimes I do these continuing education events. They ask me all these questions. Guess what? All I do is pull up the court case. Well, let me explain how this works. In this court case, this is what happened, and here's the outcome. The court ruled in favor of the trust that the trust has the ability to defer taxation until distribution. So they're like, well, how is that possible? They always ask me, how is it possible? I want to show you something real quick before we do Q&A. I'm going to show you why it's possible to do what we do real quick. Now, we don't have much time, and hold your questions 5 more minutes. Actually, if you have a question, write it down. We'll get to it in just a second. And then I think you can raise your hand in this app. So you can raise your hand, ask a question. But I want you to understand 99% of all trusts fall under this side of the fence. They do not fall on this side of the fence. So if you call up your CPA or your attorney and say, hey, can I do what this guy's saying? He's going to say, no, you can't. And you must do it this way. He's talking about this side of the fence. He's talking about the wrong side of the fence. Revocable trust cannot defer taxation. Revocable trust, in a revocable trust, when money comes into the trust, it has to be distributed in the year that you earn it. You have to. That's the law. So they're going to tell you you can't do this, okay, everyone. But they're always talking about the wrong side of the fence. I'm talking about the irrevocable side where all the power is, okay? Now, the first question they're going to say, well, Mr. Scott, if I have an irrevocable trust, I can't be the trustee. I can't control my own assets. And that is completely false, not even true. So let me explain how this works, okay? So there's what's called a control test, okay? If you're going to have an irrevocable trust, there's a test called a control test, meaning in an irrevocable trust, the government's only going to let you have one position of 3 positions, right? Here's 3 positions: the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. See right here, G for grantor. You only get one of these 3. And you know what the attorney does every time and totally ruins it for you? He makes you the grantor. When he makes you the grantor, guess what? You can't control your own assets. because you want to be the trustee, but he already made you the grantor. And the rules are in an irrevocable trust, you have to pass the test. You only get one spot, and he already made you the grantor. So you're screwed from the beginning. So we teach you the right way to set it up. The way to set it up is to have someone else be the grantor so you can be the trustee. See, I want my clients to control all their stocks, all their Schwab accounts, all their Bitcoin. I want my clients to control everything, and they can do it in my trust because they're never the grantor of the trust. And so that's what I wanted to explain to you. And those videos, by the way, on YouTube explain everything. Okay. Last thing I want to say before we do Q&A, I hope you got some good questions here. This is the last thing I want to say. I'm going to draw a line across this page. Okay. This is what you have to see how valuable this trust is. This is today. This line right here is today. Now, this is right here, is 500 years from today. Every other trust out there is only going to give you control at one point right here. Let's say you die right here. This is 10 or 20 years down the road. You have control of your assets only at one point in the whole spectrum of time. And that's when you die in a revocable trust, you control where the assets go. And that's good. The problem is and my clients, by the way, they have high expectations. My clients want control before the grave. They want control at the grave, and they want control the grave. From today until the 20 years when I die, they want control on the day that they die, and they want control from the grave for the next 1,000 years. And there's only one trust that can let you do that. And that's a very unique, special type of trust. And so that's what we teach, and that's what we show you how to do. By the way, if any of you out there are real estate people, you flip properties or you buy Bitcoin and you're selling all the time, what if I could show you a way to never have a tax on the flipping of properties? No tax on capital gains the rest of your adult. That's what this trust can do. It's right in the tax code. We teach you how it works. And so let's go ahead and open up the lines for Q&A. McGrath or Wendy, who would like to help me with that?
I've got a question.
Scott, this is my husband, and he always has some insightful questions. So let's go, Rhett.
So Scott, you
Good.
handle the trust for one of our good friends, and that's one of the reasons you're on this program. And I loved your stuff because I was a financial planner, and like a lot of the things you said, obviously we did wrong. So my question is, you have a client that has 4 properties and makes $500,000 a year. Do you put all the properties in the name of the trust, and how does the trust buy it? Number one, so there's not a tax event, and number two, for their income, how does it go directly in the trust without now avoid paying taxes until you distribute money out of the trust?
Okay, excellent question. Okay, so if I scroll down on the slides, if whoever's controlling the PowerPoint, if you can scroll down the slide that shows the tax code, okay, it's the one that has it's the one that says trust tax code on the bottom right. If you're looking for the slide, let me if you want to put that slide up real quick, they can see it. Remember, everything I do has to be based on trust case law, tax code, and IRC, or Internal Revenue Code. Everything we do has to be compliant, right? So watch this. Here's you over here. If your house is over here in this box and you sell, you come out here and you sell, guess where the income has to go back to? It has to go back to the owner. So the income comes back to you. Guess what? It came in the box that you own. And by the way, it's income because you owned it. You took possession, right? So therefore, you have a capital gain tax. Okay, you have a capital gain. The first step in my program, I was saying, John Rockefeller said this too. He said, own nothing. So what does that mean? That means you got to take everything you own and you have to get it in the trust. Step number one. You have to not be the owner if you don't want to pay the tax when you sell it. Now, if you put it in the trust, now watch this, very important. You have to sell it in the trust. You cannot gift it. You cannot grant it. You cannot give it. If you give it, now you're the grantor and there's no tax advantage. You have to sell it. Now, the good thing is when you sell it, this trust now owes the money right back to you. If your house is worth $1 million and you sell it to the trust, guess who owes you $1 million? The trust does. But watch what happens in the trust. The house is now in the trust, right? If I go out here and I sell the house, guess where the money has to go back to? Okay, it can't go to you. You're not the owner anymore. Money has to go back into the trust because the trust is the owner. That's a good thing. If you're looking at the tax code on the screen and that slide, the one that says trust tax code on the bottom, look at the first sentence. The whole code starts out with capital gains and losses, right? It says gains from the sale or exchange of capital assets shall be excluded. Now, shall be excluded is it's black and white. It doesn't mean it might be excluded. When I sell this house, the money comes back in here. The money is excluded from what? From income. That means there's no tax. Why? Because you haven't created any income. Now, it is capital. Okay, everything in this trust is capital. It's money. It's a capital trust, but it's not an income trust. It doesn't produce income. Why? Because all the income, when we file the tax return, we declare all the passive income into corpus, and we follow the tax code. We follow the rules. They're very simple. My 9-year-old could follow these rules. They're so easy. There's 5 simple rules. You follow the 5 rules, you never pay tax. Why? Because all the income coming into this trust is always passive. It's never active. Never, never, never active. So you don't owe a tax. Why? Because you haven't made any income yet. And so that's how you do it. You get the trust you get the house out of your personal estate, put it in the trust estate, sell it from the trust estate, the income goes back into the trust estate, and the tax code says, hey, that's money, but it's not income. So there's no tax. Does that help?
You're a genius, Scott. Thanks for being here.
Well, yes, that's excellent. But so when I sell the property to my trust, it's a non-taxable event. The only time that I'm going to pay income is when the trust, whatever I decide to take out of the trust, pays me.
Yeah. So even the principal coming back to you is non-taxable. What is taxable is only the interest on the debt. So if you sold $1 million in property to the trust now owes you $1 million. Remember, the trust has its own P&L, balance sheet, notes payable. The trust is like a business. It has its own books, right? But it has what's called a note payable account. If you sell everything in, guess what? It owes it all right back to you, right? The principal is not taxed, but the interest, the small interest you get from the principal is taxed. So that's one thing to think about. But it's not a lot of it's not as big as you think. It's pretty small interest, by the way. So
Hey Scott, we have a question in the chat. Anna wants to know what type of trust.
Sorry, I came in
they want to know
late,
what
but
kind of
I
trust it
missed
is.
the multiple one.
Yeah. So remember, watch this. I want to teach you why it's so tricky. Okay, watch this. So remember I did that thing where I drew the lines like this and I said, 99% of all trusts are revocable. Well, I really didn't finish the whole story there. But there's a problem with the 1% of irrevocable, because watch this. 99% of the 1%, they're going to use the wrong tax code. They're going to use the simple tax code instead of the complex tax code. Your CPA probably doesn't know how to use the complex code for trust. Guaranteed. 1 out of 100 understands it. Trust me. I talk to CPAs all day long. If your trust is one of the 1%, guaranteed they're going to fall into this 99% that use the simple code. And by the way, in the simple code, even 99% of the 99% of the 1% are still grantor trust. So there's a problem there. That's why you have to fall in, watch this, 1% of the 1% that are complex. And watch this. You have 2 types of trust. You have grantor trust and non-grantor trust. Did you know that 99% of even the 1% of the 1% will end up falling in the grantor side? They won't fall into the right side. So we have to teach you how to be here, how to be here, and how to be here. Okay, this 1%. It's not hard. My 9-year-old knows how to do it. It's really simple. It's just we have to teach you how to always live and die here. Do not be here, never be here, and don't be here. And we teach you how that works. Now, you're going to hear people on the internet, well, that doesn't work, and look at this, and this is how it works. Every time you see someone online that screwed up, that didn't know what they're doing, they're always either here, here, or here. They're never here, never. Why? Because I have 250 minimum court cases that I can quote you. I know the court cases. I have 250 court cases that prove this is how it works. So I have no problem going into a den of into a den of lions. The lion's den, I call it. I have no problem getting in front of CPAs, 250 of them, and explaining step by step with grace, with compassion. Hey, unfortunately, you're thinking of the wrong code, and this is where you went wrong in subchapter J of the code. They always try to, say in subchapter J that that's how, that doesn't work in here, and then I have to go to subchapter J and show them where they went wrong in subchapter J. So I'm not trying to brag, but I want you to understand details. The devil's in the details. Okay. So amateurs, remember this quote, amateurs think strategy. They're like, hey, let's do this. Yeah. And that's a lot of insurance people like, let's do a infinite banking program. Yes, let's do it. Before you do the infinite banking program, let's get the infinite banking program in the right structure first. So what I say, think detail. Amateurs think strategy. Experts think details. Details right first. Then worry about the strategy. And so that's where people will go wrong. And that's where you get like the IRS memo that was put out August of 24. The memo fails in like 10 different places. And I explain in like a dissertation of how the IRS memo fails on all of these different problems. And by the way, it even says so in its own memo on page 2. If you look up this IRS memo that they put out on this from the IRS, on page 2, they give you 5 exceptions to their own document. And I explained how that document is completely irrelevant when it comes to our program. So who has the next question? Anyone else have a question?
Definitely have some questions for you, Scott. All this is very fascinating to me, and you definitely had my attention when you said that people that are flipping real estate can use a trust to avoid
Yeah.
paying taxes, or I should say maybe postpone paying taxes. And of course, sometimes I have multiple partners in different deals. I do tend to flip very large development sites. And so how do you structure that with different partners? So everyone becomes part of that trust that you're in business with?
Nope, not at all. So usually
How
when
does
you
that
have a
work?
partnership, when you're doing a deal with someone, you're either a GP or an LP. Which one are you, a GP or an LP?
Typically the GP at this point.
Okay. Did you know you have the right to sell your membership units to an LP? Even though you're a GP, you don't have to give up your management control or your voting rights, but you do have the right to sell your interest to a trust where now the partnership sends a K1 to the trust, and now it's passive. There's no tax on that. See, when you get a K1 as a general partner, what happens to you? You pay what? A lot of tax, right? You get the general partnership K1 that comes back. You're going to owe a lot of money, right?
You totally get killed on the taxes. Absolutely.
You get killed, you get slaughtered. Now, what if you could sell 90%, 95% of your membership units to a trust? If you have the constitutional right to sell 95% of your membership units to your trust, guess who now has to issue a K1 to your trust and not to you? See, they can issue a K1 to you, but it's only going to be for the 5% of your 30%. Let's say you have 3 partners, you all own 33%, right? Well, you can sell 95, 98% of your 33% of membership units to the trust. Now the entity has to send the trust a K1, but guess what? The trust they send is not an active K1. There's, in the trust, it's not taxable to the trust. The trust will never pay a tax on that K1 because the trustee, which is you, by the way, you have the right to take that income and allocate it to corpus. Why? Because it's passive. It's not active income. And I have a whole slew of court cases. If someone wants to challenge me, I just send them an email. I'll go read these court cases, and this is how it works. Not only does it work in theory, it works in practice. And I can show them all the court cases.
So Scott, so I did financial planning for all these doctors and attorneys. It's funny, and we did a lot of ILITs and irrevocable trusts. This is amazing. I've never heard this with the flipping of the houses. So when would Wendy pay taxes on the income? Is it only when she takes distributions out of the trust?
Well, that's the beautiful thing, because I can teach her how she'll never need to distribute out of the trust. So taxes only become due when you take it out of the trust. Remember the picture I drew in the beginning? I said, here's the trust right here. You're making all this money at your JOB or your partnership, doesn't matter. the money comes to trust. Maybe it's a K1, but remember, it's going to be a passive K1, not an act. So when this trust goes out here and sells the real estate, that income comes back to the trust. It's not income. Even the tax code says not considered income. It says it 3 times in there, not considered income. So this is not income. Why? Because you know why? Here's the funny thing. It's not income because there are no owners here in this trust. If the IRS wanted to take this trust to court, who are they going to summon to court? There are no owners in the trust. There's only a trustee. There's no grantor. He's already resigned. Yeah.
I totally get the beneficiary and the grantor and the trust, but if the trust pays her income, how does she get her money back out without paying a taxable event? Because this is genius stuff. I mean, everybody on this program should definitely call you, even if you only make a few $100,000 a year to $5 million. This is genius.
Now, if you pull the money out, okay, you lose control of the money. Why? Because now the courts control. Remember, if you pull the money out of this trust and you put it back over here on this side, what you're doing is saying you're giving now the courts to have control of this box. Now, if you walk out of your house right now, get in your car, go down the road, have a car wreck. Okay. When they sue, it wasn't your fault. You hit a patch of ice, right? When they sue you, they're going to sue for what's called human life value. When I worked at American Express, we had something called the 4 rules of insurance. Okay. When I sold a client, they graded me. They graded my financial. I used to write financial plans this thick, by the way, actually this thick right here. And they graded my financial plan based on if I followed all the rules. One of the rules was the 4 rules of insurance is human life value. When I sell a life insurance policy, it needs to be based on human life value. So if you go have the car wreck and they sue because you're at fault, right? They're going to sue you based on human life value, not damages. They never sue for damages. They always sue for millions, 5 million, 10 million, because you took away that person's ability to earn income. Right now you're going to pay all the income they would have made had they been alive or had their leg back or whatever. Right. So what I'm trying to say is when you pull income or money out of here and put it back over here, what you're doing is you're saying to the courts, hey, you can come take this money now. You can come sue me because now I own it. Remember John Rockefeller owned nothing, right? I'm teaching you how you never have to pull it out of here anymore. Why? Because guess who buys the houses for you? Your trust owns the house. You don't own the house. Your trust owns the car. It owns your Bitcoin. It owns everything. You want a new house in Tahoe? Let the trust buy the new house in Tahoe. You want a yacht out in Gulf of America now? Thank God. Let the trust buy the yacht. Okay, that's what you want to do. And so you never need to pull money out. But if you do need to pull money out, watch this. I teach doctors how to pay off student debt 1 year. Like literally, these doctors come out of, you won't believe me when I tell you this. Doctors come out of med school with 2, 3, 4, 500,000 in debt, right? Now watch how I show them how to pay off all their debt in 1 year. Kidding, 1 or 2 years. Okay, here's what I tell them. Okay, here's their practice right here. Their practice is always. It's always been. They're working, okay, and they're being taxed to hell and back over here. What I teach them how to do is to set up 2 trusts, not 1, but 2. This is what the active trust, active being income. This is the passive trust. This is the family trust. Remember, this is your family trust on here. This is the one that has all the homes, the cars, the boats, the Bitcoin, the jewelry, everything you own comes here, not here. This is only a pass-through. But watch this. Here's this doctor right here, and he owes like 300,000 in debt. I'll just be generous. Say he owes 300,000. Now he can pay off 300,000 in debt in 1 year. How's he going to do that? Because first of all, he's going to set up 2 trusts. Okay, not 1 but 2. Now he takes his assets. He sells them. He sells the assets to the trust. Now, when you sell it to the trust, guess what happens? The trust owes you all the money, right? So this trust now owes him. Let's just say it owes him $1 million. Why? Because all of his assets over here are $1 million worth. But now the trust owes him $1 million. Why? Because he just sold everything to the trust. Now that's easy to understand, right? But if I redirect the money from his practice into the trust, there's no tax on that, right? But guess who? Now the money's here, right? The money's here. Guess who owes him $1 million? The trust does. He can take the money the day it comes in. He doesn't even have to wait 1 day and pay off his demand note. Take the money, come down here and pay off the student debt in 1 year. Have all of his debts paid off simply through the demand. Okay, and so what I'm saying is, you should never need to pull money out of here unless you have debts over here that you want to pay off really fast. Okay. Why? Because my trust buys my homes and my cars and my boats and my Bitcoin. It buys everything. I don't need to own it. I just need to live there.
You don't need a charitable remainder trust or an ILET or anything with your trust, and nothing like that.
None of that. None of that stuff. You don't need it. Those all have, remember, there's pros and cons to everything. The cons on those trusts outweigh the pros. So it's not worth your time or your money.
So if, let's say, our average audience guy here is making $400,000 a year, middle income, and owns 2 houses, you recommend even a small income or middle income person they sell their house to their trust and they have their income go directly into the trust, period.
Well, their income needs to go correctly into the trust. We have to structure it right? Remember, it's got to end up here as passive income, not active. So if they have this business, and watch this, the business is paying them 400 grand, and normally it's coming over here and they're paying 125,000 in tax. I'm going to redirect it to go into this active trust first and then be distributed to the passive trust, which is required. Now, there's other ways you can do it with just one trust, but you'll have less of a benefit if you do it that way than you would if you had 2 trusts. I like to say in our business, there's good, better, and best. I'm going to show you the best option, but if you can't afford to set up 2 trusts, then just set up one, and we'll start with good or better, and then we'll eventually graduate to the best option. Does that help?
I tell you what. So I'm just speaking for mid-level America that makes 400 to 500 grand a year, just trying to get by in this.
Yeah.
What would a trust cost for them to set up? Especially a lot of people are working, instead of, let's say they don't have their own small business, they're making 400 to 500 grand a year. They have all this debt with houses and education. What does it cost them to set up these 2 trusts? Because if it's not that expensive, why wouldn't everybody do it?
Well, honestly, it's going to cost you about 30 grand. Okay. Now, if you go to attorney down the street, he's only going to charge you 5,000 to set up a revocable trust. The problem is, not only will you get what you pay for, but you pay for what you get. Okay. When you get what you pay for, you always pay in the end. You always pay a price for having the wrong structure. Okay. So I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see someone spend 5 or 10 grand and then in the end pay and it just gets screwed over because they have everything done wrong. Why does paying 30,000 or 40,000? Why is that going to fix the problem? Because it's what it's going to do. It's going to allow me. You're going to be able to buy my time. I have a family to feed. I have a staff. By the way, when you get my time, you get my whole staff's time. So the reason you want to pay a little bit more and do it right is because when you pay the 5 or 10,000, remember, you pay for what you get. You're not going to get tax savings. You're not going to have someone spend 20, 30 hours doing all the paperwork for you. Here's the problem. When you buy my trust, you're not going to know how to do the bill of sale, the demand note, the assignment of interest, or the assignment of the debts. Okay. You're not going to know how to do any of that paperwork. And so when you pay for my trust, you're going to have my whole staff to do all the work for you. It's literally like a turnkey thing. Now, if you don't come to my office, we have to do everything through Zoom. It's going to be more difficult. And we tell you that up front. Come to the office, spend the whole day here, get everything done in 1 day, and you're going to be, happier than you can imagine. But basically what I'm trying to say is you get what you pay for, you pay for what you get. And so you need my time. You need me to create a flow chart for you, a financial flow chart that shows you how all the money's going to move now. And that I can't do that in 5 minutes. It takes an hour minimum to do one. You got to buy my time so that I can help you.
Scott, what do you recommend for what is there some sort of minimum number of income or net worth that you recommend that this is valuable for? It seems like it's valuable for just about anybody that is making any money. What is the obviously the high net worth person is crazy not to be with you. What is the middle level American that could handle or think this is going to be very worthwhile for him? What is that number?
Here's what I tell people. If you're paying more than $20,000 a year in tax, you should buy my trust. Because all that I look for, I'm a financial planner. All I look for is this. What's the break even? If I have to pay 20,000, when do I get my 20,000 back? Did you know most of my clients get the 20,000 back by the third month? By the third month, they have their money back. Why? Because they're already saving enough in taxes to get their money back. So remember, you got to start making your just financial decisions. In other words, don't say you're too expensive. No, it's not the cost, it's the value. Okay. You never worry about the cost. You look at the value. You know, you got to look at if you don't hire me, it's not what my cost is, it's what's the cost if you don't hire me. If you don't hire me, you're going to give 50K to the IRS again this year. How do you like that pill? I want you to take the red pill, not the blue pill.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, that's a great one.
You have to obviously we're going to get paid a ridiculous referral fee for this because this is probably one of the best. I mean, I did this stuff for a living, basic financial planning. This is by far the most informative financial planning session I've ever heard. McGinna, Wendy, Daphyne, you girls are the greatest thing ever because bringing Scott on here, Scott, I hope you can handle the influx of business you're going to get now. And remember, there is no fee too great to pay to them. Just remember that.
Now, McGinna will make you a consultant on her team. So if you want to sell this, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to know how to talk to people. That's it. So call McGinna, say, hey, McGinna, I want to be a consultant. I know some people that need this, right? And she will get you going.
Wow. Well, I have to admit, this has been extremely informative and a big eye opener for multiple reasons, especially for me in particular with my business of flipping large pieces of land, but obviously for other reasons as well. We didn't even get into the beneficiaries and things of that nature, which is what I typically hear people talk about when they talk about trust. That's what I thought we were going to be talking about, honestly, today. Thankfully, you got into the difference between what you are doing and what all of these other people are trying to lead you down into their, different types of trust. So anyway, and I love the fact that you have YouTube videos that we can all refer back to those.
Those things are 2 hours long. So go watch them. I dissect everything. You really want to learn it, go watch the YouTube video.
And they are pinned at the top of this page, by the way. We have part 1 and part 2 there.
I know you girls have gone over your time, but I think you have to ask at least 2 more questions because this is a very, very specific type thing to every single individual because we hate paying taxes. The government is screwing us in so many ways. Everybody wants to hear how to save taxes. Can you take 2 more questions, Scott, from the audience?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thanks, Rhett. Who has another question? I saw some hands up.
We have a few. I know that we have Jim Sullivan in here, and I know that he was interested in talking to you, but I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with that.
Let's just go right to your questions, Wendy. Let's hit them with another pow. These are great.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this, and this is kind of a backtrack, but why are other people not doing this? Scott, why are these other trust attorneys and professionals only recommending these other trusts when obviously there's so much more advantages? You think they just don't know about it, or it's too complex for them?
One other thing is pushback. They get pushback from their own CPA or their own. So remember, if I'm going to take off in an airplane, I need to have a landing strip to land. And the problem is everyone can take off, but who can land, right? They can't land the plane because they don't have a CPA that can file the tax return, okay? So we have 7 tax firms that file all of our tax returns for our clients. And so we can land the plane. We have the professionals that know how to do it. In fact, we use only enrolled agents. Here's a shocker. Never hire a CPA if you can get away with it. Never hire an attorney if you get audited. Always hire an enrolled agent. There's reasons why. I don't have time to go into it today, but you need to hire. We work with enrolled agents only. We can work with CPAs. The problem is they live in a box, and you can't. No matter how hard you pull, you can't get them out of their box. Okay, they live in a box. They will not come out of that box. And so, even if you teach them, I've taught them till they're blue in the face, and they still can't make the leap. I showed them court cases. I showed them private letter rulings. I showed them audit results with no change letters. Hey, this is the IRS saying they audited everything and made no changes to the tax return. Does that not convince you? Well, no change letter they can still come back on it. You know, they will not get out of a box they live in. They live in four corners of this box. So no matter how many people can take off the plane, the problem is landing. So make sure you use a qualified enrolled agent. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely, I'm not going to attempt to ever do this on my own. I would only go through someone like you, who obviously has a lot of experience. What would you say to people that are they're going to try to listen to your YouTube video, and then they're going to go to LegalZoom or one of those, I'm just throwing out some names. What is your advice to those guys who are going to try to do this shortcut, the $30,000 charge, and try to do it on their own? What would be the reason they would not want to do that?
Well, good luck. And, you know, when they audit you because you did it wrong, I don't know if I can help you because you can't unring the bell. Once you file the return that's done wrong and you didn't do these 5 steps, you know, you can't unring that bell. So, you know, you remember, you can learn by mistake, or you can learn the easy way or the hard way. Some people only choose the hard way and they only trust the hard way. Now, we've already learned what the easy way is. We know how to do it. So you can trust the people who've already learned it, or you can learn the hard way. So the problem is the hard way is really expensive. You know,
a lot more than 30,000 in the end with some mistakes that you made. Is that what you're saying?
for every gimme, there's a gotcha. And the gimme is, hey, you can do it for $5,000. Just do this, right? And got this guy. But this guy that you hired for $5,000, trust me, he didn't even know how to do the paperwork right. When you put it in the trust, you didn't do the steps right, and you got it all wrong. And now you have a self-style trust like Larry Connor. Okay, look up Larry Connor on Google. You know, it's all over Google. And you know, they did it wrong. They didn't have certain things done right. And there's 300 people that bought trusts from him, and they all got in trouble. Okay, and they're all paying like gazillion dollars in taxes. So you can do it wrong. It's just more expensive. Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of this, I just want to slip a question here if I could. Is this something where if once that passive, the passive trust you were talking about, for example, you used a young doctor. Once that's set up, that $30,000 entity, is that, or not entity, that $30,000 trust that you had set up, is that something now if they're doing real estate, can they use that one trust in and out for different deals?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, I didn't know if you had to set up a new one.
Well, the second trust is what's called a business trust, and that's if you have businesses and you need to handle active income, not passive income. Some people come to us with only passive income, so they don't need two trusts. Technically, they can survive with one and get everything done perfectly.
And then after that, as many deals as you want to put in and out of there, it's fine.
Correct. Yeah, and you could literally flip a house every day in the beneficial trust, never incur tax. You could flip a house, you could flip the money 10 times in one day and still never have a tax. It doesn't, because remember, there is no tax on capital gains in the beneficial trust. The IRS code is very clear, said it multiple times, says it's not income. It says it's excluded, and says it's not income. And it even, I mean, it goes to extremes to explain by reason of his determination, not by reason of the IRS determination. You know, it's and it says the trust document 3 times. It literally goes to extremes to tell you, hey, this is not taxable. Don't give us tax money if you do it this way. And people read it and they still want to pay tax. I don't understand for the life of me. CPAs live in a box, and you will not. I don't care if you're Donald Trump. You're not going to get them to come out of that box.
His question was, though, Scott, is the fee that the person pays for the 30K, does it increase every time they add or sell a property?
No. That's one time. It's one and done. You pay me
Really?
one time. It's a one time, one pay. You don't pay me every year. You pay me one time. We help you set it up, and we shake your hand and wish you well. But we're here. Remember, you buy our program. We're here to help you for the next 3 to 5 years.
Sorry, Scott, if I may add there to answer to Daphne's question, depending on the complexity and how much income and how many assets or boats or yachts or jets, it determines how many hours you will need for the next 5 years from the team. So when you set up the trust and you walk away with the trust book, there is a one and done, but then you decide how many hours you want to purchase. So you can purchase 15,000, money equals to this many hours, or 30,000 to cover you for the next 5 years, just in case. But once that's done upfront, then you have access to the team for the many hours that you have purchased upfront.
Right.
And you can call them every day, but that's the one thing I wanted to add, Scott, because it's important that when they see the different tiers, it explains why some people actually require more hours, and some trusts are a lot simpler, and you only may require 100 hours versus 1,000 hours. Just giving an example.
Right. That makes sense. Well, you've given us a lot of food for thought. Obviously, Scott, you're extremely educated in your field, and you obviously have a lot of knowledge about these trusts. And I'm definitely going to go on the YouTube channel and get you got your friend there today too. That's awesome.
I got my friend Donald Trump here. I want y'all to meet Mr. Donald Trump right here. He came to visit us. No, I'm just kidding.
Thing or two about irrevocable trust, doesn't he?
Well, I wanted to show you guys our office. So this is my little studio here. We do a lot of, our own podcast stuff, but this is one of our offices. We've got offices in the building. This is our customer service team. They've already left for the day, but we have a bunch of people here. When you buy a trust, you're not alone. You're not by yourself. We got all these people to help you. And there's some of them working in that office. So this is one of our conference. Yeah, we're right here in Dallas. There's Addie. Hey.
You mentioned 10 minutes from the airport or so. We like to hear that. You can zip in flight. Typically, a lot of direct flights to Dallas get to your office in approximately 10 minutes. And
5 minutes if you drive like me.
And a fun fact is that some of the clients, Wendy, that have booked calls with me, literally, I would see them in Scott's office. They would fly to Dallas because being in proximity and being in person gives you that extra comfort when you're making those decisions. The closing usually happens at the Dallas office. They see the teams, the attorneys, the CPAs, and everybody else that's there. And of course, Scott is there. And it's worth the trip for sure. And you also want to know who you're working with, and not just on a virtual space, but also in the physical sense of it. And I love that Scott offers that to all of the clients. And you can get a tour. You don't have to decide, but if you're in Dallas, show up, meet the team, sleep on it. And then when you're ready, you know where to find it. So it's very transparent.
We don't chase anyone, but we are here. We're a resource. And, you will not find a better strategy out there. It doesn't exist. If someone can, let's say some financial guy says, hey, I can get you 20% a year. So what if he gets you 20% a year and you lose 30% in tax? What good did the 20% do you, right? So you have to look at everything. And that's what we do here at Nexxess. We take a step back. We look at everything. We make smart decisions. Trust me, my investors literally have 3 or 4 times more money in the end. Because why? Because now they're keeping a lot more money every year. So now they don't have to be so risky, right? Some people, I believe in risk, but not risky. There's a difference, right? So we teach you all kinds of cool stuff. So
can you then invest from the trust? Can the trust invest?
No, that's the job of the trust. The job of the trust is to invest in everything. That's your job as a trustee, is to be the investor.
Got it. Before we close out, you guys, I just want to take one more second and I want to once again thank Ali Bigler for not just hosting Rainmakers podcast launch over there in Las Vegas at the actual aircraft, but also being here in the room with us today with Scott McGrath. Listen, Ali Bigler sponsors the Rainmakers podcast here. And if you guys want to find out more, you can check him out at smarteraircraft.com. And with that, I'm going to hand this back over to my hostess with the mostest, Wendy, to close us out for the day.
Yes, and Scott, thank you and McGinna both for coming today and enlightening us on this trust. For sure, I have definitely been looking at the wrong trust, apparently. So we are going to be calling you. We're going to be coming out to visit you in Dallas. Once again, I know I met you at the book signing there last year, which was great, but we didn't get a chance to really go into depth.
I kicked him out of the room because it was a room with 33 authors. I said, you go hang out with the husbands of the authors downstairs. And he's like, oh, okay. And then that's my
It
fault.
was Scott. We're coming back full circle to you. And I say this, I'm not even taking this the least bit lightly. How many people could you handle if we brought a big group? What is your typical highest number that you could handle? Because I'm thinking we're going to have a lot of people that are going to want to come to this. We're going to call it a mastermind.
Well, we have over 4,000 square feet here, so our office is pretty big. So,
great. Okay. Any last comments that you want to say to everybody, Scott? Where can they find you? We know we've got your website.
Just go to Nexxess.com and look under consultants and find McGinna's page, and just say, "Hey, I'm interested." You can email. You can see all her contact information on our Nexxess website.
I also made it easy. It's right here, Scott. So I pinned to the top the one that goes directly into the intake form.
Yes, for those
That's
on
even
Chatter.
better.
And also, if you want to be a consultant, please reach out to me and let's be on the same team and work together and grow together and help our loved ones with their financial decisions, at least guide them, at least educate them at a minimum. And one person cannot do it alone. And I'm grateful to Scott because I make better decisions and I am a stronger source for my network simply because Scott is always one phone call away. And for the most part, if not 99.99% of the time, he's always on my Zoom calls. And Wendy, you're a witness. We had 30 women from the last book on a Zoom. Scott was there for many hours answering questions. And yes, Scott is on all social medias. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him on Instagram under Scotty AI. There is a Nexxess Advisors and the Nexxess Trust. There's 2 different pages, very easy, XXS. But you guys, for you on Chatter, you know me, you know where to find me through Wendy, of course. I believe in honoring the source, and Wendy is the source of today's conversation. And thank you so, so much to you and to Daphyne for having me as a co-host for this podcast and for allowing Scott to educate us all because I also learned a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you right back. I just want to say really, I don't want it to be missed because Nexxess is spelled a little bit differently. And so when you guys go searching for Scott McGrath and Nexxess Business Insiders, it's Nexxess, Nexxess,
ESS.
ESS. Thank you. There was 2 X's.
NEXSESS.com. Is that right?
Yes. It's we don't. If you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. So we have to be different.
I love it. Well, thank you again, you guys. We appreciate all the information. We're going to definitely be looking you up at Nexxess.com. And thanks again to Ali Bigler over at Smarter Aircraft, the next generation of private aviation investors. You can find him at smarteraircraft.com. And with that, we are going to end the room. We will see you next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another episode of Rainmakers Power Hour. And you guys have a great day. Thanks to our tech team too, Paul and Nigel. We always want to say thank you to those guys. All right.
Bye.